Mommy Track Daddy Whispers podcast is now called Birth Agni Podcast.
The three main aspects of women's bodies and lives, which is menstruation, birth, and sex, is what Colin says are absolutely wonderful, orgasmic, blissful spaces where we are truly allowed to nourish us. And when she says that, I realize that, oh, it's the contrary way that we are taught. Menstruation is taboo, napak hai, is what I all the time listen from people. Uh, Sex is taboo.
This is the Birth Agni podcast, the fire that brings us alive, that burns myths and opens a channel of authentic natural birth stories. This show debunks the many myths of the medicalized births, showcases the plethora of choices a pregnant couple can make to embark on their empowered birth journey. I'm Divya Kapoor, a certified birth and lactation counselor and an aspiring traditional birth attendant. Let's get the flames blazing high. This is part two of the three-part series we are doing with Sanjana. This is the story of her home birth and the events that led up to it, her theories about life, etc. And if you have not heard the previous episode about her natural birth at a birth center, I urge you to do that before you come in here because I feel that only then you'll be able to make the most of this episode and feel a connect with Sanjana all the more. It's like the cherry on the cake. I'm also hosting a free birth awareness webinar, which is intended to be for people who had a prior unsatisfactory birth experience, whether vaginal or cesarean birth, and they are looking for a space where they can unload their birth stories, where they can share what they've been feeling about their births without being judged, raw narratives of how they felt, without being put into boxes, without being sympathized down, which is usually what happens when somebody has a cesarean. There's a lot of sympathizing down the emotions, which is not helpful. So, here's the webinar wherein anybody looking for vaginal birth after cesarean, unsatisfactory birth experience you want to unload, or as a first time mother, you want to avoid surgery, these stories and this connection with women should be helpful. So, if you want to sign up, you can go to my website birthagni.com/contact us and select free birth awareness from the list, or you can sign up from the form that is there in the show notes, and I'll see you there. Let's begin the story now. So, Sanjana, you spoke about you being a lunar person in your second pregnancy, and you were very much in sync with the moon. Would you
Mhm.
like to elaborate on that? What do you mean when you say you are a lunar person?
There's always been this fascination towards the moon as a young girl, a kid, teenager, adolescent, all of that. But there's never any meaning attached to it. So growing up, there was never an articulation available up until my first child and postpartum. And during postpartum, I came across certain women, folk, um, also texts and books, which informed me that we are lunar creatures in the sense that we don't need to follow the calendar, but it's the moon that influences our bodies and our menstruation cycles and all of that. So this is what came to me from a lot of external sources. And over a period of 5 years, let's say, I started then uh, mapping my menstruation cycles with the moon cycle. And I realized there's some kind of a pattern to it. It's not what I was taught that
Hmm.
was happening, but there's a great synchronicity between the body and the moon, whatever it is. I might not be understanding it right, but there's a definite sync. And how does one explain that? We don't know. We don't know. I mean, there's of course this,
Hmm.
scientifically speaking, the gravitational pull and all of that. Uh, but I realized when I connected with the lunar cycle, I also was able to shed a lot of my masculine energy and become more feminine, as relaxed as the moon was. And then I also noticed patterns in my inner emotions. For instance, the full moon has always offered me clarity. I'm always in a very calm, composed. Whereas the new moon brings out a lot of emotions. I'm either in tears or feeling extremely sad, or there's a deep rage that comes out. So initially I had no way to deal with it. I was always scared that, oh my God, I'm going to be a mess during the new moon. And slowly and steadily with uh, I used to share this with older women in my circle, and they said, just breathe through it, and no matter what, trust that the answers will come to you. Write down what are the questions that are troubling you, what's bothering you. Those are the deeper engagements that will lead you to finding answers, and that really happened. And it's kind of been 3 years that I'm noticing this pattern. It's continuing to happen even now. That's what's happening. So uh, that's how I became more conscious. That also helped me disconnect with the linearity of time. I am able to see things differently when it comes to time. I And when I got pregnant again, this time around, I realized that I'm just going to follow my body's. The first time I was extremely active, eating healthy, doing everything by the book. This time I was completely relaxed. I also actually became a sloth. I ate and I rested. I ate and I rested throughout the pregnancy. I was procrastinating to the extent that okay, कल walk पे जाएंगे, परसों ये करें, फिर
Mm,
squats करेंगे. But I did none of it. I
mm,
did none of it. Not one activity throughout my pregnancy. And throughout the pregnancy, I did not do any scans except one, which was uh, midway, and that was also out of choice. I did not visit any uh, institutional care providers, no options, no one. Um, and I did not track weeks or days or due dates, which was fantastic. So, like I was saying in the last conversation, I read this parts of this book called 10 Moons of Pregnancy by Australian midwife named Jane Hardwick Collins. And the way she wrote it, the way she designed the book was all about uh, addressing how powerful the body is, rather than addressing what you need to fear, what you need to uh, supplement the body with during your pregnancy. And she spoke about how your body is enough and enriching in it, nourished in itself to take care of you during pregnancy. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. So I was saying when you were talking about intense emotions coming out, aligning with new moon, for the listeners who do not understand which part of the cycle that could be for them, and it may or may not sync to the new moon or the full moon. As of now, different people have different cycles, and when you start seeing the pattern, it aligns on its own because it's a belief system. Your body responds to a belief system. So that those intense emotions is your time, which is in the scientific world called as PMSA, premenstrual syndrome, when we are overwhelmed, we are angry, and spiritually, that's a moment of growth.
Yeah.
Whatever has been troubling us in the past comes up, flares up,
Yeah.
and then we find answers. It's supposed to be like that.
Yeah.
And there's beauty in it that of course we've never been taught. I also learned about it or started like you said, being at peace with uh, the flow of life and appreciating every bit of it, every bit of the emotional release I had. Every now and then as women we do have our own patterns which are far more non-linear than men. So for the listeners, that is where you can find yourself. um, So the resting phase of the pregnancy must have brought in some answers to you as to how do you want to go about it. Were you decided on whether you want to have a home birth this time from the very beginning?
Yes, very clear. Like no matter what, I am birthing right here.
Mm,
Uh, and when I spoke about this to a few people whose opinions I needed, for instance, my friend Reba, who was also my doula in my first birth, and I wanted her with me. Uh, my husband was, of course, okay with it. Uh, okay, we follow your lead, is what he always said. So, and Reba, she was like, okay, you, all you need to do is one, surrender, and second, be prepared for anything else that may um, possibly need intervention. So, uh, I had a list of a few medicines in homeopathic medicines, which I borrowed from another woman on the group
mm,
that she had. So I kept around 4 or 5 medicines uh, uh, for instance, if I shiver, there was medicine.
mm,
If there's bleeding, for instance, for that, for birthing the placenta. So that list was made, and I'd also called up a local nurse in case I need sutures or checkup on me. So that was the only arrangement that I did, and the only thing that I did consistently throughout my gestation is listening to this beautiful, beautiful meditation by Feel Good Astrology, and it's a channel on Spotify that I discovered by sheer chance. I heard it once, and I thought that she's got a wonderful voice, one, and it's actually leading me to a space where I want to be in 10 months. So that's something I and my elder child, we both of us, right before we went to sleep, we would just put it on and go off to sleep. It was a meditation on physiological birthing and all kinds of affirmations, and so we did that, and that was my only guiding light. Literally, that was my only guiding light. And I was with my elder child, so we used to watch a lot of physiological births online, YouTube, and Instagram gave us the opportunity to watch these beautiful women put out their births. So our rule was we will first watch after we are tucked into bed. We will first watch at least two home birth videos every night, then put on the meditation and doze off. I of course had an idea of how I'm going to navigate, how I'm going to use the house when I'm actually birthing and in labor. And I had learned from my previous postpartum experience that I need to be prepared more for the postpartum than for the birth itself, because I knew that okay, birth's going to take its own course and baby's going to be ready, come out on her own terms and time. But I had my traditional uh, Malish person ready, who I'm very, very connected with. Her name is Amina. She's a local person, 60-year-old, very wise. But she was ready. Like, okay, auntie, I'm gonna call you when I give birth, and you have to start healing me, helping me heal from the next day. And she was in. So I prepared my massages. I had prepared a list of foods that I should be eating for the next 1 month after, and the number of hours of rest. So I had figured out that my husband or there's going to be somebody who's going to be taking care of the elder one while I rest through the first, 40 days at least and rest. And also I was very clear that nobody is going to come home in the first 3, 4 months of postpartum. So that message was out clear to my close friends and family. Acquaintances, of course, aren't allowed. So yeah, it still continues that way. Even if I have very very few close people coming in, I don't have to get up and address their needs. They'll come, they'll sit, do their chit chats, and leave. So it doesn't trouble my bond with my child or in any way separate me and Mira. That has been empowering also in a lot of ways, because then now I know what my child's personality is like. I can now, like even with the first one, the second one, and the first one, we know that there are only 3 or 4 sounds that these kids make. They're constantly communicating. If they want to poop and pee, I can't make those sounds, but I'm gonna try. There's a ah just before they do it. It's something like that for her. So I know that okay, she is going to, and she's only 2 months now, 2.5 months now. know from the first week itself that this is the sound when she's going to be peeing and pooping. Then there's a wail, sort of a cry when she is hungry, a very small one. So as soon as she makes a sound, I know that I need to feed her. And when she's sleepy, there's another sound. So these are the three core needs of the kid, of the child, of the baby. And because of the time that I get to spend with her, and vice versa, because she's not disconnected from me, we're both very in tune with each other's uh, needs. And by the time she turned a month, she was also able to communicate that if she's very aware that if nobody is in the room, she'll make a certain kind of annoying sound that where is everyone? Maybe shouting. It's a different tone altogether. Ah, करके and we'll be like, yes, we
Mm.
are around. We have to, even if you're in the other room or in the toilet, and then she'll be quiet and waiting for 5 minutes. So otherwise, I would not have imagined having such a communicative relationship with an infant. Nobody imagines that children are so intelligent and
Yeah.
perceptive. So that really helped. It's still helping.
Yeah, yeah. It goes on to show that all the research papers that come out, all the studies that come out on how human babies communicate,
Mm,
they are done in a controlled setting, and then all this information comes out. In your case, you preserved the connection, and which is culturally preserved. In our Indian culture, there is a 40-day time where the woman and the baby is left alone, meaning nobody disturbs them, for that bond, for that connection to naturally nurture itself. Because one may not feel the love right after the baby is born. It also takes time. And I would go on to say here that it's very strong of you and very sovereign. Let's go back to the same word
yeah,
of you to create that sort of an atmosphere. And I'm sure it's not easy. And on the 10 moons that you spoke of, pregnancy, for the listeners, pregnancy was always traditionally in a lot of cultures, not just ours, has always been a 10 moon affair. It has
mhm,
never been about 9 months. So people in the past used to track themselves. Women were always looking at themselves and their progress in pregnancy and align it with the moon, because how did the month come in? It
yeah,
came in from the 28th day cycle of the moon, and that's how the 30-day
yeah,
month is. Um, so, what is more um, meaningful to us in terms of we were here before the calendars and the clerical work came in, and that was nature, that was moon, and all the problems that have come in today, the blame that women do not go into labor, that
mm,
women, etc., is because you have started micromanaging pregnancy. Really,
yeah,
it has become very corporate. You
yeah.
should not be doing that. I do want to later, when we discuss postpartum, talk about how did you create, what were the necessary steps for you to create that sort of a boundary. But before that, about your labor and birth. How did you go into labor? When was it that you went into labor? How did it look like this time around from the last time?
Yes. So this time around, when if you remember from my last birth, I was constantly communicating with my child, with my uh, child that 3 घंटे में आना है, 3 किलो होना है, इस डेट पे आना
Hmm.
है. So what happened last time is because of the fast labor, I had a mild tailbone injury, which I realized 2 days after I gave birth. So sitting and movement and walking was a challenge in my postpartum last time. This time around, so it took me some time to heal from that injury. I rested. I didn't really do anything about it. I let the bone heal and take its own course, which took around 6 months at least. Uh, and then this time around, I was constantly communicating to the body and to the child, कि आराम से आओ. Uh, we'll navigate. the labor will flow with it, but there's no rush.
Mhm.
Just make sure that my body has no tears, there's no internal organ that's damaged, and I'm protected throughout labor. So let's navigate this together, is what my communication was. And I also informed my body that, and the child, he, I had a week in mind when I felt he, you will be ready, the kid and me will be ready. I had this week in mind, which was between 20th to 25th. Those were the 5 days when I thought I would birth. And I started laboring on the 20th morning of January 2024. So घर पे instructions दिए थे कि जब I live with my father, my husband and my elder one right now. That's a temporary living situation. So the instructions for my father was that I need the whole house to myself when I'm in labor. So you have to figure out like an alternate space to hang out during my labor and delivery. After I give birth, you're of course welcome to come. And luckily, what happened was on the 20th morning at 5 a.m., he was leaving for Ayodhya. As I started laboring at around 4 a.m. in the morning, when I woke up with the pain, I wouldn't say pain, the cramps. It was
Mm.
like a menstrual cramp, somewhere between menstrual cramps and being gassy. So I rushed to the toilet thinking I have gas or I've got loose motions, but nothing of that kind happened. So that was it. And then the contraction just stopped after 30 seconds or so. And then it started again in 15 minutes. So I was super confused. And since he was out, so I went out from my bedroom to the living area and I started talking to him. We spoke for an hour. I was sitting and I was also in contraction. I was contracting and talking to him and not informing him that this is happening. So he got ready. I wished him well. And he was going to be gone for a week. When he left, I was like, okay, so this is my cue that I'm possibly in labor. By the time it was already 2 hours, it was 6 a.m. And I got hungry. I made quickly cooked dosa and sambar in the next 30 minutes. I had that. I made my orange juice and kept some ready for the next hour. I had my filter coffee ready by the time. And I'm having my breakfast. My husband and my elder child, Tyra, they're sleeping. I was not aware कि क्या हो रहा है घर में कुछ नहीं. So from 4 to 7, this is what I did as I was contracting. I was walking around, nourishing myself, just following what my body needed. Hunger, तो भूख लग रहा है तो खा रही हूँ. If I'm needing some hot drink, I'm having coffee. And then after an hour or so, I wanted juice. And then another hour passed, and I felt it getting a bit stronger, contractions. But I still wasn't validated. I somehow needed validation from someone. See, this is in fact, labor. So by 8, I called Reba. And just the night before, Reba and I had a call saying that Reba, I said, why don't you come over? Because I told her that this is the week that I imagine I'll be birthing. So since she's in Bangalore and I'm in Bombay, she just called me like the night before saying I'll just book tickets tomorrow during the day and I'll arrive in a couple of days. We were like, ठीक है, and सुबह ये हुआ. So I called her around 8, hoping she'll be awake. And I told her, look, I don't know if it's gas or I'm in labor, but this has been happening for the past few hours. She was like, you're definitely in labor. So I asked her, so how are you planning to reach or when are you planning to come? She's like, what? No, silly, you're going to birth by the end of the day. And I was like, Acha, take care. So, and she was like, we'll be on call. So as we spoke, we figured out how to plan the rest of the day, what to do, and all of that. That's the validation I needed from her. She's the only opinion that mattered to me in that moment. And I continued. I had a birth ball from my previous birth, which I used. So this time around, it was lying dusty throughout the 10 months. And I had kept it ready, however. And I sat on it, I swung on it. And another hour passed on the birth ball, and it was kind of very, very comfortable. Every time I got a contraction, I was breathing. I also played very good vibey music. So, all those things really help. And contrary to what women are told, the body is not constantly in pain. Of course, there might be women who experience it differently, but for me, it was just a little tad bit higher than something like a menstrual cramp. Painful, yes, but bearable, navigatable, if that's a word. And by the end of the fifth out is when my first real surge pulled me down. So uh, the first surge came in, and I was standing next to the wall near my bedroom. I held on to it and I went squat down because that was my act of surrender to the labor. Because had it my imagination of birthing this time was actually in a forest. I wanted to birth in a forest amidst trees and hold on to the trees and the branches and birth into the soil. So this is what was my fantasy for birthing this time, and of course that didn't work out. But when I held on to the wall and I squatted down, I closed my eyes in those moments, and in my head that was a tree, and I was squatting down to the earth and completely surrendered. And that's the first time I uh, had to utter a word. I felt like,
Use your voice.
use my voice during labor, and the only word that came out was my husband's name. And he was fast asleep here, and I called his name out a couple of times, and he came. By the time he came in, the contraction was gone, ended, and he helped me come back up, helped me sit because that was really intense. Uh, and then I told him, see, I've been in labor since 5, sorry, since 4 in the morning, and now it's getting intense. So I need you to, uh, the only thing I need you to do is hold me when I need you and just give me back massages throughout the contraction every time it comes. Just do that. And then every few minutes, like 5 to 7 minutes, I started getting these uh, strong, intense surges throughout from 9 a.m. in the morning. It went on until 11, each surge being more and more intense than the previous one. And it was me, my daughter, and my husband in these 2 hours figuring out. So my daughter was very excited. Oh, is baby coming? Is baby coming? Is baby coming? I was like, yes, 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 but you need to shut up. And I was raging at her because I don't want you to be the person who tells me when the baby is coming. You just need to be with me, be around me, and I'm going to tell you when the baby is going to come and you can see her. So then that got sorted. She was very excited because she was the one who she wanted to catch the baby when she's out and all of that. And she had seen so many physiological home births that she was so prepared for it. I had answered all of her questions and doubts. So what is after the baby, the placenta comes, and then what happens in the family? Yeah. She was very excited about living that. After an hour, of the first hour from 9 to 10, from 10 to 11, I was tired, and because the contractions were so intense that I wanted to rest. And strangely for my body, I couldn't lie down on my back. So every time I tried to move back and lie down, my body pushed me ahead again. So there's no way that back support was possible. Then I tried to try the baby pose and bend forward and sit, and my body would refuse that as well. Uh, then I was trying to figure out कि मैं कैसे बैठूं, क्या करूं? I don't want to stand anymore. I don't want to go squat on the floor because it's really painful there as well. So then I got my birth ball back into my bedroom. I kept it near my bed. I sat on it and I rested my elbow on my bed, and that pose was my pose. So figuring out which pose you're comfortable in is also key to labor. And that is something which we are not allowed in institutions. So, had I not chosen this format, I wouldn't be able to figure out what works for me. So, that 1 hour of last 1 hour actually of labor is when and every time there was a contraction, I used to roar. There was this intense guttural uh, sound that I made, which is a sound that can never come out otherwise. It was just a labor sound. And I made sure uh, Rahul is around, and he was there giving me back rubs throughout. And of course, these contractions came in very, very closely towards the last hour. The contractions lasted for 90 seconds, and I used to get another 90 seconds a break. Uh, Through these 4 hours, 5 hours, every 1 hour I used to call Riva and ask her guidance to help me navigate this. And one of the key things that she told me was to go to my core every time that now I can't explain what core is. She just said, just go to your core and try to figure out from where the wave is arising. And I just did that. Every time there was a contraction, I was roaring and I was at the same time going back, closing my eyes and going deep within my body to figure out from where is this intense surge coming out and then how is it resting back. It was like a wave,
Yeah,
It
it's
had
a
a
wave.
high,
It's
yeah,
like the wave of the ocean that hits you really hard
really hard.
and then
And then
goes
it
back.
rests. Yeah. So then I was following that. I had a nice wooden comb in my hand throughout my contractions. So I was using that to distract myself. That
Yeah,
helped.
yeah.
And breathing. I was doing my intense O breathes. And by 11 o'clock, I told my husband I feel like I need to go to the toilet. Now, if you remember from my first birth, I birthed Kyra on the toilet. That memory kind of came to me very solidly. That's where I felt a lot of rest in the first time. So let me just go and check if this works out. In fact, I fell asleep for a few minutes there because it was so calming that "Chalo, I'm on the toilet." And then I told my husband, okay, let's just try the water thing. Can you turn on the tap?
I
Can you
was
let the
about
water?
to
Yeah,
ask, did you think of using the water to relieve you? Yeah.
yeah. We did have a birthing pool. I had borrowed it from somebody around, but I didn't feel like using it at all. I didn't feel like getting into the tub or using water in that sense. So, but in the toilet bathroom, I asked him to turn on the tap. I turned. There was one tap closer to me. I turned it on as well. So I was listening again to the water flow and also touching the water. And the last 30 minutes, the surges had become super intense. But also, I became very aware that I'm going to be birthing very, very soon.
Yeah.
And as I touched the water, I felt the baby drop from the uterus into the cervix and downward. So I told my husband, ki, can you check if you can see the baby's head? Is she crowning? And I gave him a better view. I rested on the toilet and I moved ahead. And he said, "You seem fully dilated." He didn't touch me on it. He didn't put his finger in or anything. He just said that you seem fully dilated because the cervix is wide open, and but I can't see her head. There's no crowning. Um, and that's when the last contraction hit. It was extremely strong. I would say that was the only painful contraction. The other contractions were surges. I would not call it pain, others might. But for me, those were my birth prep, my baby struggling inside to find her position to birth herself the right way, and me, my uterus and my body, all everything, the whole functioning of the beautiful machine that I am, figuring out how to prepare my body and her to birth the right way. So for me, labor is not the idea of labor is not painful at all. But the last one was pain. And that's when I remember pulling Rahul's hand, holding him on and really roaring out extremely loudly for around 60 seconds. And when that ended, somehow there was no pain at all in the body. That was the last contraction. And I looked at him and he looked at me and I started laughing and he got clueless. क्या हो गया suddenly from a loud, painful noise, she started laughing. And I held on to him and I just slid down onto the floor of the toilet, kneeling on my knees. And I told him that she's coming, and I'm still laughing. I'm laughing and smiling intermittently and laughing, smiling. That was all that I was doing in the last 5 minutes. And that's when I felt like my uterus pushing her down. So what is called the fetal ejection reflex happened. And with the first push, I didn't push. I made no effort absolutely to push. And I had also, Rahul by that time also knew that he's not supposed to talk or say anything to me. Just be quiet and do what I lead him to do. So 'cause he just encouraged me saying one line, You're doing well, just do what you need to do. Uh, so with the first fetal ejection, her head popped out and I was still laughing. I bent forward. I looked at her, and by the meantime, my husband had also knelt in front of me, exactly I was. So we were kind of mirror images of each other. And I looked down and I saw her, the ring of fire, the head coming out. And with the first reflex, her head up until her neck was out. Mm. And I could see the sack. She was still covered in the sack. So,
Oh, she was born in call. She was inside the waters?
no, the water, but
No.
her head was covered. If that's all we could see.
Ah, okay.
Uh, my husband got excited, saying, "Okay, are you going to catch her? Should I catch her? What's happening?" Like, huh? Okay, I was in some kind of an ecstatic moment, and I was just happy to see her head and knowing that she's come. It's another 15 seconds for break Mila, and of course, this her coming out was not painful at all. So I was watching as she arrived. I was laughing. Mm. All the physical pain had completely vanished in those few minutes. No pain. If anything, it was the opposite of pain. Sheer ecstasy. Mm. And then in another 15 seconds, I told him that, okay, I think she's gonna come out. I made zero effort. Let me get this out to all that listeners that there was zero effort. The second push that my body made, her whole body came out. And my husband caught her instantly and passed her on to my chest. And that's when I realized that the sack was just around her head and face. So my instinctive response was, as I held her with one hand, with the other, I got the sack out. I asked my husband to remove the frock that I was wearing, and with the frock, I just wiped whatever uh, was left on her head and face, and I just gave her a kiss and hug, and we were there. I said hi. I wanted to know if it's a girl or boy because I wanted a girl again. He told me, yeah, it's a girl, and I said hi, Meera, and then we walked. That's been our that's the way we have named both our kids at birth. We had decided what the name would be. So at birth it was like a hi Kyra, and this the second time around hi Meera, and that's about it. So we walked from the bathroom onto my bed. Rahul had kept the chuck's pads ready.
Mm.
So bed pe fella ke rakha tha, and all I did was take the few 5 steps from bathroom into my bedroom with Meera, and I rested. I just There was no crying whatsoever. She didn't feel the need to cry. So she was on my chest, and surprisingly, she didn't. Again, she did the breast crawl like Kyra did, but it was challenging for. She was a smaller baby. She was around 2.5 kilos at birth, and she was finding it difficult to naturally latch. Unlike my first one, who just crawled like a pro and latched like a pro and didn't need me at all. But this one was looking for support. So then I had to give her help her find the nipple and help her latch onto it. And after she did that, I think we both rested. I looked at my elder one. So she missed in my last hour because I was wailing and roaring not wailing, roaring during the contraction. She got a little afraid.
Scared. Yeah.
So every time I roared, she used to run out of the bedroom and come back when I was quiet and then go back. So in the toilet, she arrived just as Meera came out. And she entered the toilet because we were both already sitting, and she saw the baby out already. Like, oh, she's out already. It's a little baby. And then she was sad, but I couldn't see her. I couldn't catch her when she was coming. She was excuse, I think she was the most thrilled person in the room that day. And so I rested. She was sleeping on me. Kyra was sleeping next to me. Rahul was trying to figure out कि मैं इसको क्या कैसे help करूँ क्या करूँ. But I think we were all in a very comfortable, at ease space, knowing that everything is fine. Now in my head, my worry was I need to know for sure if there's no tear. I
Hmm.
need to know for sure that the placenta has uh, birthed completely and there's nothing left in it.
So the
Now,
placenta, did the placenta come out with the baby or
no,
no? Yeah.
no. So the cord was still connected, and I was not worried about it, but that was something which was running at the back of my head that this is the last phase of this birth which I need to um,
Finish and be
transition,
done.
yeah, be
Yeah.
done and transition smoothly. I also went back to my meditations, which I did every night. Now I don't remember listening to it fully, not even on one day, except for the first time that I heard it to understand what the content is. After that, I was so invested and trustful of it कि मैं relax हो गई. But my subconscious had picked up every word that she had said. And she had said how painless and orgasmic this birth would be, and it was, in fact, painless. So that was my only recurring thought as I was feeding her and resting. कि Placenta कब आएगा, कैसे आएगा? That's when I made my next call to Reba after around 45 minutes of savoring, enjoying, my baby and the first hour. So she said that you try to feed her in an upright position down and keep like a chuck's head underneath and see if the placenta bursts itself. So,
Yeah. For the listeners, a chuck's pad is a blue colored
yeah,
absorbent. So it's
underpad.
used underpad. So it's a big underpad, rectangular, a sheet, which is used in home births or even births in the
Yeah,
birth centers. Yeah, wherein it just collects the blood, so that you do not have a mess. Even if it's created, it's not an issue. But
yeah,
so that you have the space more neat and tidy, and we are also able to see how
yeah.
much blood is there and
Blood
how
is
is
flowing.
the mother responding to the loss.
Yeah,
For our observation from a distance, we do not
yeah,
interfere with the process as traditional birth keepers. But yeah, yes.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, since you mentioned flow of blood, after I gave birth, there was literally like a teaspoonful of blood which flew. And then after the so yes, when I squatted and fed her,
Mm,
and um, that's when the placenta came out, healthy and full. So when as soon as I saw the placenta, I could instinctively figure out that the whole placenta has birthed herself, and it was caught on the chuck's pad, and it was kept next to me as I came back up and lie down. So after the placenta, of course, there was some blood, but I realized that there's no, looking at the amount of blood after an hour or so, I realized that there's no bleeding happening as such, so I'm fine. And it also didn't feel like I had torn. Now, this is all I'm relying on my feelings, but it just felt right after the placenta was out. So Reba had to look at the placenta from a video call. She also felt that she said that okay, it's all out, and that's when I completely rested. Then I was like, okay, then now there's nothing really to do but eat and rest. So there was hot khichdi available. I had khichdi with a lot of ghee, and उसके बाद sleep had vanished. I was really tired up until labor, till the last contraction. But after she was out, after I ate, sleep had vanished. We were clicking photos. Uh, I gave Mira to Kyra. She spent time with her on the chest and some time with Rahul, and that was just about bonding with each other, both of us,
yeah.
taking photos, videos, checking out the baby, how squishy she is, all that, all that. 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 legs, counting,
Mhm.
and that's how easy it was, just like any other day. By 11:30, at 11:30, she was born, so it was around 8 hours of labor, birth. Yeah.
Yeah. Listening to your story, I do want to focus, and especially for the listeners,
Mm,
about the importance of self preparation.
Mm-hmm.
So, a disclaimer goes out for all the moms that take classes from me, um, that all the classes that all the information that I give you will remain information, and you'll not be able to internalize or have faith in them until you do the work of, for example, you saw home birth because that is what you wanted to internalize.
Yeah.
And your subconscious takes up so much information
Yeah.
and creates a visual pattern as a clue for your body, and you can manifest the kind of birth you want to have. If there is fear, fear is normal, fear is natural. We all have it. It's fine. It's not a problem. It's a direction. It's a signal. Sometimes when it can be an impediment, it's a signal for you to discover or figure out things that make you nervous. So
Mm.
use all these signals wisely and prepare. Self preparation is key to birthing. Childbirth classes are important. They become important as a guide, as a reference to how birth can look like outside of the mainstream that we have heard, the sensationalized, the
Mm.
extremely challenging, um, full of drama, really.
Yeah.
But birth originally is not full of drama, it's simple for us as practitioners. I hate that word. For us as birth keepers, as women in the room, it's boring to us.
Yeah.
Sitting in a corner, watching all of it. And it's like, okay. Sometimes all the roaring becomes music to us and we enjoy it because that's what we want to hear. We want to hear you
Yeah.
roar. We want to hear you
Yeah.
go all in. So self preparation is key, number one. Number two, when you had that pulling sensation, pulling you down, when that probably was the transition into the active phase of labor. So when that pulling sensation happened, when you were kneeled down, how did that feel in your body?
It's a moment I have to go back to. But I do remember like my blood rushing from my head and all of them accumulating at my toes and feet. And in a sense that the rush of flow of blood downwards is what was pulling me in addition to my uh, uterus contracting. So the uterus is also pushing downwards and my blood is all gushing down. So when everything's going down, of course I'm going to fall
Mm.
downwards. So that was the energy at that moment and going down but raising my both my hands up. Okay, I surrender. I'm down. I'm down is what uh, was the feeling physically and emotionally
Mm.
and also voicing it with an ah, you know, oh, or whatever was that. So just the natural pent up. But what you said to your listeners about words, they're so important. They're so important to keep us on the right track, on the track that we imagine to be right for ourselves. Because even two home birthing mothers are not the same. They're not on the same journey. That's what words do to your journey. They inform you and they keep you away from all the uninvited self doubt and doubts that are put in from other people's stories and experiences. So words are so important. Affirmations to affirm ourselves of our path. And what also helped me was writing down. So last week is when I went back into my journal where I write. Well, whenever I write when I feel like, and I went back to early August where I had written down on a page my birth plan. And the birth plan simply said birthing will happen in the towards the end of January. Baby will be around 3 kilos. Birthing team is Rahul, Kaira, and Riva. Birthing in Papa's house. And at that time, we had not planned that we will be in Papa's house for this. But somehow I just wrote it down and I forgot about it. There are a few other points I can't remember right now, but all those points is how It was. So no tears, no tears, no internal injury, no bleeding. All those things is what I had written. And labor will take its own time. I'm in no rush. Don't come out in 3 hours or 4 hours. Take your time. And yeah, it just manifested because my subconscious was instructed. Now there's a lot of people who might discard the whole theory of subconscious mind, but I completely and absolutely believe that there is uh, something beyond our rational selves.
And
Yeah, that's all.
it's for all of us.
Yeah,
Even those who do not believe it, they haven't slowed down to be able to see it. Because your mind is so occupied with the
yeah,
goals, with the running, with the making sure things happen, which you have to extract out of yourself.
yeah,
You don't see the magic because you haven't slowed down. That's it. It
yeah,
happens to all of us. You're never left alone. There's someone still holding your hand.
yeah,
Um, but when you see it is when it just becomes you become so calm and serene, like you said, when you became a when you were always a lunar person. Women are lunar creatures, like you said
yeah,
in the beginning. But that realization suddenly made you come back home. You
yeah.
were home, place.
Where do we belong? Yeah,
Where do we belong? So it's all about slowing down. And I'd maybe I can bring it. I usually don't, but maybe I can bring that little episode that happened between us. We were supposed to record. We had to um, reschedule it, and the next morning you messaged me that your daughter is here in the recording session with us. Um, just our story, we are listening. She's here,
yeah, yeah,
witness to the story sharing session.
yeah. Both of them actually. The other one's lying down right next. One is on my lap. The other one's right next to me.
Wow, that's a blessing.
Yeah, yeah,
So you messaged me in the morning that Amira has a pooping session going on at our scheduled time. And it was just to convey that all that happened was supposed to happen and it fit in. It was supposed to fit in like that. So there was no, the reschedule was not a problem to the process. I mean, it wasn't a bad thing. It was just supposed to happen. So sometimes little hurdles, little detours are still taking us further,
yeah.
but we are so confused because we are not slowed down. That's it. That's really about it. We all have that ability to see it.
Mhm. We don't need to. Yeah, I'm also learning that. Being a Bombay born and raised person, you are only taught to rush. And that's there. That's always there, no matter how much one tries to slow down. But the births have transformed me, and now, despite being in Bombay, I don't rush. There's also this whole question of home is something which troubled me because I never felt belonging anywhere in a place or space. Even in the home that I was raised, I never felt at home. So seeking home in other cities, in other places, in India and outside began. And the best I've felt at home is in Berlin. I love that city. I love the culture. I love everything about Germany. But again, it's not the belonging and home. Now that I, in retrospect, see, it's not the home that I, imagined myself to be. And today I know, tomorrow it might be something else. But today I know that the home that I'm seeking is actually my body. And the home that I'm seeking is the peace that my body needs to be at all moments in life. Then that also helped me then invest in the right kind of people because that's where my emotional well-being comes. So then I transition to giving access to only those who nourish me. Those who don't, then I've become like this cave woman who's very protective of myself, not of anybody else, but my own well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's inspiring. That's very, very inspiring. I'll take you again back to when Reba told you to connect to your core, meaning
Mm,
your body. is what I get. How she was trying to communicate. She was trying to ask you to get in touch with your body in a deeper sense and see for yourself what's happening. So, what did you feel? What did you see? Did
Yeah, I don't know how to articulate that really, because even when we had a conversation a few days later, she was like, I couldn't say this sentence to anybody else because when I say go to your core, how how does one translate that and apply that in labor? But I just said it to you and I knew that you would get it. And I don't know if I got it, but it helped. But when what one means by code, what I can translate or explain through this conversation is going back to, so there's somewhere in the body where uh, the surge or the pain or whatever you want to call it during labor, uh, she can close your eyes, just tap into your own self. But that's where it emerges from. And for each one, that core might be different. So just close your eyes, breathe, and go inward when you're in labor. And that's what I did. And then I found a point from where I realized that, oh, this is where it's emerging and flowing and rising. And then it's the same pattern where it's going down and, vanishing. Then that's how I navigated the last 2 hours of deep, deep, deep intense search. Find that point. I found that for myself. It was, I don't know, I can't really find a
yeah,
word for where it was coming from.
yeah. I like how you explain it. How I talk to my mothers is I tell them that you don't have to fight the sensations because
Yeah,
subconsciously you may.
yeah,
You need to go with the flow and work with the flow and be one with the flow. I think this is a good method to be able to find that flow first in your body. And the moment you've found where the surge comes from and how it goes, your own pattern, you've already made a connection and you're already flowing with it because now the exercise is to find out more about it than to just work with it. So I find it a great example of how to flow with your surges.
yeah.
And then about the bliss. Did it feel like the pleasure? Were you in a state of orgasm? We call it bliss, and women do orgasm because
Yeah.
when the baby is outside the out of the bony structure, your pelvis, and into the birth canal, your yoni, the same place where the nerves that you feel the orgasm from, when the baby hits it, there's an ecstasy. Plus the hormone of love, that is oxytocin, is what is elevates to levels that it's not possible for the human body to elevate it to that level, the levels that it elevates to in birth. That combined with the neural sensations, and then the
Yeah.
baby's in the flesh, the flesh. So
Yeah. 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 So there's definite bliss, but I wouldn't say there was a definitive orgasmic sensation because
okay,
the way one experiences orgasm, at least for me, was very different from the way I experienced coming out. Of course, I would compare it to an orgasm because it was as beautiful. But the bliss being, like you said, the skin to skin, there's no, it's so soft and so smooth and uh, painless. And oxytocin being allowed to do its work is so magnificent in itself with no additional, uh, injected hormone into my body. It, there's almost like an overflow of oxytocin naturally. So I know for a fact that that was completely at play when I was birthing. So, uh, yeah, and the absence of fear really does the trick for anything, not just birth, but anything in life. When you're not afraid, really, what's there to lose? Yeah, and going back to the book when I read it, uh, the three main aspects of women's bodies and lives, which is menstruation, birth, and sex, is what Colin says are absolutely wonderful, orgasmic, blissful space where we are truly allowed nourish us. And when she says that, I realize that, oh, it's the contrary way that we are taught. Menstruation is taboo,
Yeah.
napak hai, is what I all the time listen from people. Uh, Sex is taboo. Birthing is seen as either, post birth is dirty, and during birth, you're some goddess who, most cultures. These three absolutely mind blowing instances of our life. And menstruation, we are lucky that, we get to experience it month after month in healthy
Yeah.
bodies. And I wish I was introduced to it in the manner that I'm understanding it now. But all that one gets is a scientific explanation followed by all kinds of sociocultural stigmas. So, yeah, when you look at all these things in the way that they are intended, all with a fresh framework, and that allows you to not be afraid of anything.
I feel it's easier to make women believe that they're going to be victims of their own lives
Mm,
and then control them because you become the Masiha, the savior, all of a sudden. And everybody takes that role in our lives very easily. Nobody asks us. They
mm,
feel it's their responsibility. And it takes us some time into womanhood
yeah,
to feel that I never gave you the right to become that for me, even in our relationships or at these junctures that you spoke about,
yeah,
menstrual cycles or birth or um, sex for that matter. Nobody's our Messiah. Nobody's doing us a favor.
yeah,
Instead, women, when they are not told that our menstrual cycles make us powerful as human beings, help us grow intellectually, when birth is not painful, it is painful, it is intense, of course. it's
yeah,
it's it's a journey again, but there is something in it for you which you'll only be able to find once you're there up with a view after the hike.
yeah,
um, but there is something for you in it. When you're told that, you suddenly become autonomous.
mm,
You have that power back on your own bodies. You become the real goddesses that you were always born with the
to be,
power of. Yeah, to be. And then sex, when it's all in the same thread. It's
yeah,
really in this. It's an entangled space that a woman is in, and that's where we belong. And I still feel traditionally, tribally, as a tribal community that we were initially, because our culture does celebrate sexuality in the temples, etc., in the textbooks, and at the same time covers it up with a lid
yeah,
for nobody to see and revel from a distance.
yeah,
That it never becomes an experience. It always becomes something that needs to be put on a pedestal and be
yeah,
prayed to, and never experience the beauty of it all. So I hope with this something changes, and it changed for me only in birth work. To
yeah,
be honest, birth work has changed me tremendously as a human being, and we all have those inclinations, like you had to the moon.
yeah,
You were always given those signals that we never were able to make out the meaning of. But when we arrive, we can always connect back to those signals. Even as a child, what we
yeah,
felt was probably right. We
yeah,
just couldn't, we weren't empowered enough in our own being then
right,
to be able
right,
to just ride on the horse and
yeah,
go.
yeah. And because we're not amidst that tribe, we are raised by women who are hustling, who are not able to relax or connected to themselves for no fault of theirs. Uh, we don't know who to look up to. Who do I ask these questions to? Who will be able to answer me or believe me and not laugh at my questions? You know, so yeah, we've just transgressed tremendously as a species.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know what can be done really. I think one woman at a time,
Yeah,
like you,
yeah,
one story at a time.
yeah,
Um, if
yeah,
this raises a question in your head, um, and you want to reach out, and definitely do, and probably I can help you connect to Sanjana if Sanjana is willing. And then,
yeah,
however, if this makes you curious, you can do your own, you can dig deeper.
yeah,
And again, whatever I say or whatever anyone else says, you'll find your own answers because your answers are not my answers and my answers are not someone else's answers.
exactly. Yeah. Mm.
It's twisted, but it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't
Yeah.
seek for validation, say, from somebody else's experience. There's like a customized package for each one of us. We might all be interconnected and related in our journey, but we have our own thing to do in the way that it's supposed to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that, but no matter what, be prepared for postpartum.
Yes, no, no, good that you
Yeah.
brought it up because,
Yeah.
and thank God that it naturally came there when you spoke about that validation.
Yeah.
First of all, Sanjana, how did you communicate to your family? And I'm asking this because a lot of us can be in a setup
Hmm.
wherein it's hard to be able to create those boundaries. Birth, as much as it is an emotional, spiritual, physical experience, it is also social because our social
Hmm.
positioning in our families or the way we are does filter into our births and sometimes overpowers our experiences and impacts the entire experience if not the outcome.
Hmm.
So how does one own our our space or take up space in our lives, especially for a moment that needs you to be at the center of it?
Hmm.
But how does one do that, and what would you suggest, and how did you?
Hmm. This is a very tricky question because I know that India may majority of the women are in a joint family setup. So I really cannot I cannot understand how that functions. I sometimes crave for it. I wish that there was this joint family setup, provided each one is understanding and supportive. And not in
Unreal.
but then I'm very grateful to not be in that setup really every day. Because I as an individual, as a personality, enjoy solitude. I nourish myself by being alone, and I would highlight it. I never feel lonely when I'm alone, or even with. There might be instances when with people I feel sad, but when I'm alone, I'm at my best. I enjoy it so much, and I've grown up partially in a joint family setup, and then we've become transitioned into a nuclear family. But as an adult, I left home at 18, and I've been by myself throughout my late teens, 20s, and also now. So, and we are a nuclear family ourselves. So, uh, knowing my personality, my close family, relatives, and the closest inner circle of friends uh, knew that uh, this is how I intend to birth, and these are my uh, terms on which I will be birthing. So there was never really anything that I had to put out beyond a few conversations with the close ones. Now, for the others who imagined that they would be given access, I used to do WhatsApp status that, this is, I don't want to engage into a conversation and give explanations. And I realized also that I don't owe anybody an explanation. I don't owe anybody any. So for people in my network and friends and other relatives, there were WhatsApp statuses that I put up that this is my birth, this is how I imagine my postpartum to be. So, whatever it is that I want to guide, please. postpartum mein there's going to be no access. I will let you know when I'm ready to meet my baby, me and my baby, and whatever. So that is mostly taken as an arrogant or rude thing. But I also grew thick skin by then, so it didn't matter what people think or continue to think, and that's my privilege. I, as a personality, as an individual, that's my privilege that I am like that. So it doesn't affect me, but I know that it will be extremely hard for women to do. So I wouldn't be in a space to tell women what to do, but this is what I did. And I'm completely primal, where it's completely me this time. It's not even my husband, it's not even my father or my elder child. It's between me and my baby. That for the first 6 months, it's just going to be us. And people need to be reminded here that the first 6 months, the child only needs the mother. If you want to meet somebody, if you want to do something for anybody, it should be the mother. This whole village that we talk about, it needs a village to raise a baby. It needs a village, yes, but that village is supposed to be for the mother, not for the baby to be passed around. The mother can tie the baby around her chest and go about doing anything that she wishes to do if she has a solid village. So be that village. So more than the mother, I would address the people who form a part of the village. That try to be that village. Cook for her. Don't expect to go be a visitor and ask the mom to cook for you. जाके बर्तन धो के दे दो, खाना बना के दे दो, कुछ भी कर लो, but
Mm.
baby और mother को just don't separate the child from the mother unless she requests time away from the baby, unless she asks you to hold the child. Let the mother guide you and not vice versa. And the second part of it is if you're well nourished emotionally, like I do give access to people who I completely trust. For instance, my Malish Walia, she has been given access to my baby since day one. I will never tell her not to touch her or not to talk to her because I trust her completely. She's in a sense, an absolute stranger. My father has access to her, husband and child, of course. They are the code. I've spoken to so many friends, or I listen now to so many anecdotes of friends. Girls are miserable. I'm like, अरे मैं क्या करूँ? सास आ गई अब, ये आ गया, वो आ गया, दिन भर आके बैठे हैं. I can't rest. I'm cooking. And these are similar stories which I hear on and on and on. Even mothers, for that matter, the mothers of girls are so insensitive at times because they themselves didn't get it. What are we going to pass on? Uh, so I know that it's the reality of a lot of women. I don't mind crossing the line to rudeness also, if that's what it takes to keep my health and sanity.
Yeah, and your children
And
before anybody.
yeah,
I
yeah,
want to add a thought to it, and it's up to the listeners how they want to take it. And I agree with you completely when you say women feel miserable. Sometimes they speak up, they are ignored, they are demeaned, they are. There's so much that happens on a day to day basis to women. And maybe to, I'm not saying it doesn't happen to men also. It happens to
yeah,
men in joint families as well. They are caged. Um, or sometimes we're caged by our minds, just by the attachments we want to keep. I want to add this thought to it because we are talking about us as primal creatures, and that's where I align. In nature, if there is any animal, and if this triggers you that we are all animals, then maybe there's more to discover, and that's okay. But to me, we are all animals. We are one with nature, like we spoke
last time.
last time. An animal, if the animal doesn't feel good in their body about a situation, that's all they need to be able to run out of that situation. Because there's a defense mechanism that's working in your brain. Those are the things that you're equipped with. That's your armor, not something to feel shame or guilt about. That's your armor to tell you that this situation is not suitable to you or your
Yeah,
health. Now, we have been given these checklists or these rules to follow in the social structure, which is not in alignment with who we are as primal beings. Think about this and put yourself in nature and see if there's a dangerous situation that you feel in your mind and your body completely. And if you're forced to be in that situation, what would that do to the psyche, to the emotional health of the animal, and how does that slowly shows up in the body? With human beings, we have great capability because of the power of the mind to be able to keep reversing the damage, but the
mm,
damage can still lurk on and show later. So make if you can. I mean, sometimes we can't. Um, if you can, um, and with it, I want to ask you, Sanjana, what kind of a support do you feel women need in postpartum? Um, Birth is easy as compared to postpartum.
mm.
So, where is it that you feel women need help in postpartum? And how can they prepare for postpartum to be able to allow that transition into a healthier journey?
Hmm. So again, uh, I can't speak for everybody,
Mm,
but broadly, what, for me, from thinking from my own experiences, good food, nourishing foods for the body to heal, uh, time and space to rest with the child, uh, a lot of time in rest. Let's say 24 hours, may say let her sleep for 18 at least, because it's anyway, you don't get continuous sleep if you're choosing to not formula feed the child, if you're breastfeeding, you are on call all the time. And uh, let her rest completely. Make sure, depending, of course, we are all now, right now, as we speak, we are addressing a certain section of society,
mm,
not all classes or castes or groups, you
yeah,
know. So,
yeah,
depending on your privileges, uh, make sure you have as much good health as you can. Uh, as a husband, what a husband can do is ask the wife, if you're not in a joint family, uh, before, invite. What I've understood is we tend to invite family members into the home, and the woman might not be comfortable with them. So, as we are transitioning into postpartum, we are also having severe identity issues. It's taken for granted that she's become a mother. We're not taught or given training to, you know, uh, had we been left been in our primal setup, that would have probably come naturally to us. But none of us is in that element. So you cannot take it for granted that a girl knows what motherhood is or what it means to be a mother. So don't take it for granted that she'll be okay with anybody who's uh, allowed into her space, because deep down we are still those primal selves, and that might actually trigger a lot of unwanted emotions. I don't want to give it any terms. If there are secure husbands can actually make the home a more peaceful and habitable space for you. So, allowing rest, having the right kind of help, the help that the woman needs in the form of a relative, a mother in law, sister in law, sister, or if none of it needs. So, that kind of help. And know what your needs are. And depending on what your needs are, in addition to food and rest, which is, I think, a universal need for during postpartum. In addition to that, whatever your needs are, just voice it out. Find the right people uh, to be around and support you. That's it. Voice it out. Even if you're not heard, voice it out.
yeah,
If you get the right support, great. If not, well, that's your journey.
yeah. And it does, after a point, create a benchmark for your future requests or
Hmm.
boundaries.
Yeah.
So, if we do not speak who we are, how do people who are new to who we are, because women go to the man's family and you are a stranger to them, for a long, long time
yeah,
because you haven't lived with them. That kind of a comfort that comes with your own parents, and sometimes it doesn't even come with
yeah,
your own parents. There are places where you do not want them, and it's
yeah,
normal to
yeah,
not want them into certain spaces.
yeah,
So I think, yeah, that's a. I mean, I'm applauding the advice that you just gave on voicing your concerns.
yeah,
Um, it's fantastic, even if you're not heard. That
yeah,
creates the ladder on which eventually you'll be able to bring changes to your life.
yeah.
If they cannot be sudden, they can
Also,
be.
postpartum massages for at least 40 days, at least. Do yourselves a favor and let your body thank you 30 years later. At least 40 days, at best 6 months,
Hmm.
and then, of course, you reduce the frequencies. But do the postpartum massages. It's the best thing you can give to yourself.
Yeah.
Because I have, first time around, I did it for a month, and then when I moved to Bombay from Kerala, I couldn't find the right person. It's also about bonding with the person and person doing it with integrity. So if you can find a good postpartum midwife, again, Dai, who knows what to do and how to bring your body back, because it's not just your uterus that has worked, it's every single organ in your body that's gone, taken a turn. All of them need to be brought back to alignment. And it is through the touch of this woman, the other woman who's working with you equally, that your body is going to be nourished. So let those oils go in, let the woman do the work with you, for you. And yeah, thank yourself 20 years later. Because if we don't do that, half of our troubles is the absence of these cultural practices. Continuing to forget the oils that are body, the touch of a person who's partly. And all this also balances your emotional and mental health so much. That's what's happening with me right now. The conversations I have with Amina Aunty, it is what's helping me heal a lot of emotional. And we also have fights because she's very traditional, also very progressive, but very traditional. We talk about everything under the sun, from religion to science. She's not literate, but she's far more wise than any PhDs I have met in my entire career.
Yeah.
And I say that as a PhD holding person myself. There's a definite dissonance about certain things, like when she says, uh, I started menstruating 2 months into my postpartum, and uh, she said, हम नापाक होते हैं इसीलिए periods आता है. I said, क्या है? What is the definition of नापाक? And she said, गंदगी, गंदा. That नहीं नहीं गलत है. I don't agree with all of this. बाकी सब ठीक है, but so she was like नहीं. Then she got angry. She's doing my massage and she's also angry and I am also angry. And then I was like ठीक है, आप prove करके मुझे बताओ कि we got into some religion to science, हाँ, in our conversation. कैसे बता सकते हो आप, कैसे प्रूव कर सकते हो कि ये नापाक है? अगर आप प्रूव कर दो तो मैं मान जाऊँ. तो शी इज लाइक, देखो मैंने अचार को हाथ लगा दिया, वो पूरा 1 किलो अचार सड़ गया. जब तो मैंने बोला मैंने भी तो हाथ लगाया, तभी नहीं खरा. नहीं 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 किया होगा. आई वाज लाइक ठीक है रुको, लेट मी स्टार्ट मेंस्ट्रुएटिंग नेक्स्ट मंथ. और मैं एक पूरा ½ किलो का नया आम का अचार, ना ऐसे मेरा मैंने हल्दी का अचार बनाया है, मैं उसको हाथ लगा. नहीं नहीं हल्दी का अचार खराब नहीं होगा, वो वैसे भी जमीन से आता है तो नहीं होगा. ठीक है, तो मेरे पास ½ किलो आम का अचार, मैं उसी को हाथ लगाऊंगी और फिर देखेंगे कि वो खराब हो, फिर कितना दिन लगेगा. शायद 1 दिन में खराब हो जाएगा, खराब महीने. मैंने बोला ठीक है, सो लेट्स डू दैट. बोला खराब नहीं हुआ तो क्या? बोला फिर मैं छोड़ दूंगी, मान कि ये नापाक है. एंड देन शी वाज लाइक खराब हुआ तो क्या? फिर बोला मैं मान लूंगी कि ये नापाक है. So that's our bet, and these are the kinds of things that you need to nourish yourself, these conversations. So the essence of sharing this story was that these women who come to massage you are going to offer you so much more than just massages, because they come with tons of their life experiences and wisdom, good, bad, both. And she doesn't ever forget to remind me that I'm going to thank her as I grow old, because she's helping me heal. And I love that investment. So yeah, do that for yourself. I would say. If you're lucky, you'll find the right masseuse postpartum. Yeah. All this also translates into your relationship with your kids and how you parent them. Because I grew up in a generation where abuse was normalized by parents. Smart beat every single day, 365 days.
And
Uh,
verbal abuse.
Full abuse.
I think even physical abuse we can tune down,
Yeah,
or really eliminate.
yeah.
Um,
Oh my God. Yeah,
Verbal abuse,
yeah,
it's a constant fight
yeah,
in families.
yeah,
For yourself,
yeah.
sometimes it's when people are on autopilot. Sometimes, oh my
Mm,
God, yeah, we can talk about it probably in a separate episode about the
yeah,
social aspect of birth.
yeah.
So, thank you so much, Sanjana, for sharing your story. And there's so much to it that we can cover probably in another episode. I think we need more time to be able to.
Yeah, and I want to also thank you so much. I appreciate your work and your time, your energy, everything that you put in with your heart and soul. So I enjoyed both our conversations, and I look forward to
Yeah, yes,
many
yes.
more. Yeah,
Me too. There's a different kind of an energy when you are sitting with someone, and I'm really grateful we did it and connected.
yeah.
Yeah. There is a field beyond fear where the body is empowered to take on labor and birth. To land there, it is crucial to take birth education. To enroll into our unique labor and birth preparation course, reach out to us at www.birthagni.com or scroll through all available prenatal and postnatal preparation classes. Thank you for listening, all in the spirit of birth, womanhood, and freedom. Remember, you got the power. This podcast is about physiological birth and does not offer or claim to provide medical knowledge or diagnosis.